Hello, brovs. We're back with more Emily Ward stories and grandmother stories, as presented via Francis Hurlbut. Grandmother's children, grandma's children. Say, Grandma, said Golden Hair, how many children did you bring up? Oh, said Grandma, let me see, I've forgotten. And she began to count on her fingers, and you could hear her murmur, Benny, Laura, Ada, Bolivar, Well, 14 or 15, I guess. Tell us about them all, said little Emily. Oh, do, pleaded the other children. Now I have a confession to make that is abhorrent to my soul, and that is, in the usual acceptation of the word grandma, isn't grandma at all, though in the bona fide sense of the word she is 100 times more grandma than any other grandma I ever knew. I knew a little girl who used to call her own grandma just plain grandma, but this was grandma I'm writing about. She always called good grandma, and that was just exactly the adjective that suited. The children didn't find it out for a long time, and when some officious person told them, they were in a great rage. It wouldn't believe it, and Grandma herself was wroth when she heard they knew, and wished that some people would mind their own business. I can myself remember that when these children's mammas were little girls, and Grandma was called Aunt Emily by everybody, the real little nieces and nephews couldn't make the other children any madder than by telling them that Aunt Emily was their aunt, and wasn't aunt at all to the others. But if Aunt Emily herself was appealed to, she would say that she was aunt to all good children. As the sun is peeking through and putting shapes on the pages. So being aunt, to the mamas, she had to be grand aunt to the mama's children. And that is all there is of it. But that is more than was desirable. However, they are all used to it now and don't care a fig for any other kind of grandma because, you see, they don't remember any of them. Well, said one of the aunties, who was the first one you took? Little Benny, said Grandma, and I have told you about him. The next one was a little 2-year-old girl whose father had deserted her mother, and the mother was too feeble to get a living for them both. So I took her, thinking I would keep her until someone wanted to adopt her. But when 2 years after, a man and his wife did want her, I was not willing to give her up, and the little thing loved me so she didn't want to go. But without my knowledge, they went before the judge of probate and made oath that they had property and wanted to adopt the child and bring her up as their own. And without hearing any evidence on the other side, the judge gave them legal authority to take her. So they came with their legal papers and took her. The poor little girl clung to me and cried bitterly, and I cried too, but I thought I had to let her go. I was young and didn't know I might have gone to the judge and got him to reverse his decision. Was she pretty? Said Golden Hair. Yes, returned Grandma. She was as pretty as a peach, with blue eyes and red cheeks and yellow hair, and she was as good as she was pretty. She didn't have a pleasant life with those people, for as soon as she was old enough, they made a drudge of her. After a while, they moved away, and I never knew what became of her, and Grandma sighed and looked out of the window. After a long pause, someone said, Who was the next one? The next one was a young English girl, about 12, whose mother had died and been buried at sea. Her father came to Conneaut, poor, with a large family of children. I felt very sorry for them all, and especially this little girl, for I remembered how unhappy I was when my mother died. So I took her and sent her to school until she was herself old enough to teach. She is an old lady now. She writes to me occasionally, and just a few days ago I received this letter, which shows that there is gratitude in the world. Grandma felt in a very capacious pocket, and finally she began to pull out one thing after another, namely 8 letters, 3 handkerchiefs, 5 pieces of string, 10 packages of flower seeds, some children's toys, a little candy that was immediately distributed amongst the children, and a few nuts and raisins that went the same way. But she didn't find the letter she wanted. Well, said Grandma, this is what she said. I've got your picture, and I often look at it and shed tears over it and pray for Aunt Emily. I still pray that if we never meet again on earth, we may meet in heaven. You took me, a poor, friendless, ignorant girl, and fed and clothed and schooled and made a woman of me. And daily I ask God to bless you. She was a good girl, said Grandma, and I was always glad I took her. The children stopped munching candy. The letter had so impressed them, and there was a pause when someone spoke up and said, "Tell us about that funny old captain that was here the other day." "Well," replied Grandma, "it was at this same time I met him, a ragged, hungry little boy crying in the street without a place to shelter him. I asked him what he was crying about, and when he told me I had to go and buy him some shoes and clothes, though I was not very rich myself, for I was teaching school and getting $2 whole a week, which was high wages in those times, let me tell you. I found the place for him where he could work for his board and go to school, and he told me the other day that if there was any good in him, it came from my influence over him that winter. The next spring, I got him a place on Captain Shook's boat, and I don't remember ever seeing him again until a few days ago. Tell the children," said one of the aunties, "about the letters you got the other day, and then we'll let you go on to the children you wholly brought up." Grandma got the letter out of her pocket, and after looking it over, proceeded to read a few extracts, which were as follows. Aunt Emily took up a poor boy 35 years ago who was earning $16 per month, and how she has stuck to him from that day to this. What would have become of the boy or his family had not Aunt Emily lifted him up? But for her moral plane and its influence on me, I should almost be afraid to leave this world. As it is, I am not. M told me that the very first letter he wrote in the Postmaster General's office was one to Aunt Emily. Well, he might. Aunt Emily made him Postmaster General. Meantime, remember now and always that on this earth, beyond his wife and children, there is no one so dear to him as Aunt Emily. Though the children didn't understand all of this, the grown-up people did, and one of them remarked that here was another case where gratitude was not wanting. "Yes," said Grandma, "this is a pretty good world, after all. The people that I have been good to have almost always appreciated it. I've many other letters that I could show you, but I've laid them away so carefully that it would take me some time to find them. And after all said and done, I believe I was to tell about the children I have brought up. Yes, put in one of the aunties. But we wanted to know about the children you pretty near brought up, too, and as they came first, we wanted to hear of them first. In the meantime, I overheard one of the mamas saying to one of the children, 'But that isn't half, or rather 100th part of the people Grandma has helped. I know a millionaire and president of a big railroad who says that, but for Aunt Emily, he would have been a poor plodder all his days. And another millionaire and businessman who, though he has been ungrateful to her, would not have amounted to much if she had not sent him to school a year and got him a place in her brother's employ.' I believe that's David Ward, who wrote a scathing biography called Emily Ward, one of the worst witches on the planet, and Eber, a scoundrel and a crook. I believe that's him, but I'm not positive. And got him a place in her brother's employ, and a young doctor who she helped through college, and who bids fair to shine in the profession and host of others. That is Owen. He's the one that wrote the Bacon books on Shakespeare. Dr. Owen. I can't remember his name, though. But Grandma is waiting. Here Grandma looked up and remarked, "What is that you are saying?" "Oh, nothing much," said the mama, "only supplementing your story a little." "Oh," said Grandma, "well, Bolivar, Laura, and Ada were the first three children that came to me and stayed until they married or died. Bolivar was the son of old friends who had died, and what little property they had disappeared amongst creditors, and the children were left to take care of themselves. Bolivar had been bound out to a man who treated him badly, and when I saw him, ragged, dirty, and half-starved, I told Father I'd like to take that boy. We were living at Bois Blanc at that time, and Father thought it would be a good thing to have a boy of about 10 about the house. So we took him. About the same time, a little cousin of mine, whose health was rather delicate, came to spend the winter with me to see if the clear air of the upper lakes would not restore it. We grew so fond of each other, and she became so well that she lived with me always after that, or rather until she was married. Sally's eldest daughter came to stay with me a while, and as her mother's health was delicate and she died a few years after, she too lived with me until she was married. So after the loneliness of the first few years at Bois Blanc, I had 3 children to care for, and as there were no schools on the island, I had to educate them also, and our time passed away pleasantly in study, work, and play. Bolivar and Laura were very near of an age, and they were companions for each other, but Ada was 4 or 5 years younger and was rather lonely, for she had left at her father's home 3 little sisters and a brother. I remember I made her a great big doll as large as a baby, and as I couldn't get a china head for it, I painted the face on the cloth head, dressed it throughout in clothes that could be taken off and put on, and after it was all done, I showed it to her for the first time and asked her if she would like that dolly. Her face beamed with delight. She took it, looked at its face and its clothes, and then she hugged it hard, kissed it a dozen times, and finally burst into a passion of tears, holding her dolly close to her heart. I took her in my arms and comforted her, and we talked a long time about the dear ones at home. And I told her we should go and see them someday, but always after that her dolly was the great delight of her heart, and she would dress and undress it and put it to sleep and treat it in every way as if she was a grown-up woman and the dolly was her child. It was a fine place to bring up children. Their cheeks were like roses, and they grew and thrived like the evergreen trees. Ada had been with me 3 years, and by this time I had gone to Newport to live when Sally came to us for a few months with Florence, a little mite of a girl. That was Mama, said Porty, and the children looked at her as if they couldn't imagine her a little girl. Yes, said Grandma, that was Mama. A few months after a little boy was born, and as Sally was never well enough to take care of her children. After that, I kept Florence and the baby, so then you see I had 5 children. But I lost 2 of them shortly after my death, and Grandma drew a long sigh. The baby was a beautiful child with great blue eyes and golden hair, and I loved him as if he was my very own. He died when he was a year old, and in his last sickness, which was a long one, he wanted no one to hold him or care for him but me. I had a great deal to do that summer. Bolivar was sick with his last illness, and Father had a long, tedious illness, and my hands and my heart were full of work and care. I had been sitting up every night for weeks, but this particular night Eber said I should not sit up. I must sleep, for if I did not sleep I would be sick, and then who would take care of the sick ones? So someone took the baby, and I went upstairs to try to sleep. But I could not sleep. The moans of that dear child rang in my ears, and if I fell into a nap I would wake right up again. Finally, I could stand it no longer. I got up and took the baby and told the watchers to go to bed. I saw as soon as I looked at the child that life was almost over for him. He seemed comforted and soothed as soon as I took him, and gazed at me with a look of love that almost broke my heart. About 12 o'clock the change came, and without a struggle his dear spirit took its flight. When the breath had ceased, I closed his eyes, and stooping over gently, kissed the sweet lips. As I did so, the tears that streamed from my eyes bathed his face, and I sobbed aloud. Dang. Then those heavenly blue eyes opened, and he gave me such a look of love and peace and joy, as if he would say, Auntie, do not mourn for me. I have gone from pain to happiness, from death to life, and I love you always. Then they closed again. Oh, said Grandma, I have always thought he came back to comfort me, for a great peace came into my heart, and I knew that it was well with the child. The children looked awe-stricken at Grandma as she wiped the tears from her eyes. Not many months after that, Bolivar died, and though I felt his loss keenly, I did not feel it as I did the baby's. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to me that any mother could love her child more than I did that one. Here, Grandma looked so worn and tired out that the mamas sent the children out to play, while Grandma leaned her head upon her hand and seemed lost in thought. Is that a bat? No, it's just decorative. All right, Bob. That's all. Goodbye. Until next time.